We've recently put a damp-proof course, or part of a damp-proof course, into one of our properties, and that's because the trees were growing through the walls and they were causing all sorts of problems. And downstairs also, because the pointing had been compromised, there was signs of damp across the walls. Now, we chose not to do an entire damp-proof course, but we did actually do outside wall, and then we did some inside as well. And you can see that we brought the plaster back from the wall. Now, normally the plaster comes back by about a metre all round, and then you can drill from the bottom outside and from the inside, usually below the level of the skirting, or you remove the skirting while you're putting this in. Now, a damp-proof course, or a DPC, is usually a layer of material between the foundation and the rest of the building, which prevents water from getting into the building fabric. In this case, because the building's already there, then we are putting in a course which is a fluid which goes into the wall, it absorbs into the brick and then creates a barrier. In a new building, it's standard and cheap to fit a DPC during construction. Traditionally, these were two overlapped layers of slate or lead, though some old buildings don't have them at all. Modern buildings tend to use bitumen or polythene-based materials, and you can get recycled plastic damp-proof courses. Land drainage is one of the most important things, though, around the building. Now, timber frame buildings with minimal foundations will only need small amounts of DPC material. But it's important to fit a DPC here, as timber can soak up moisture, because that's obviously how trees live, and will rot if it's not able to dry out easily. However, whether masonry or brick buildings do the same is open to debate. There's a growing school of thought that rising damp is an urban myth or a complete con, and that retrofitting chemical DPCs can be a waste of money, quite apart from the environmental impact of the chemicals used. And famously, Mike Parrott of Lewisham Council in London has investigated over 5,000 buildings and has never found a sign of rising damp. In every case, damp was attributed to something else. But that doesn't mean to say damp-proof coursing doesn't help where you've got water signs within the building. What can you do to check whether or not you need a damp-proof course? Well, first, check your roof. Check the gutters and the pointing at ground levels, or get a building expert to do it. You can dig out anywhere where the ground level is higher outside than in. In some cases, digging down 200 to 300 millimetres and putting in stones or gravel will actually help the drainage around the site, and so fixing the problems will cure most damp problems. The other possible cause of damp is condensation, which generally occurs lower down walls where it's coldest. Again, it might look like rising damp, in which case you also need to look at your heating and ventilation systems. If the walls have been affected by long-term damp, even when the problem has been solved, it will usually involve replastering internally, as the original plasterwork will be affected by hygroscopic salts, which could result in continued damp problems. Bear in mind that the building can take up to 12 months to dry out. There can be a problem if the damp-proof course has been bridged. That means that there's been a render put over. Water can potentially move up the render where it can't move up the brickwork or masonry. This could also cause problems with frost damage. So DPCs must extend through the full thickness of the wall, including pointing, applied rendering or other facing materials. A side effect of retrofitting damp-proof courses is that it's often in older properties, the original lime-based plaster is breathable, so allowing moisture to move through it, and it's flexible, and then it's replaced later with strong cement renders. This can cause serious cracking problems at the point where the old plaster meets the new, so make sure you replaster with lime or a weak cement mix. So modern damp-proof courses are generally of three types. There's chemical damp-proof treatment, recommended for most types of walling. A chemical is injected into the holes and drilled, which is drilled at intervals of the wall, and that's what's happened here in this scenario. So injection mortar or creams can be used, but they're only ideal where a good-sized bed joint is visible. And then electro-osmotic treatment is an active system that introduces a very small electric current into the wall that pushes moisture downwards. Now, we've chosen on this instance to use the chemical damp proof treatment, and you can see as it's drilled into the holes outside and then inside the building. This gadget is used to attach to the pipe that's gone into the wall and allows for the chemical fluid to run through that pipe and into the walls to create the membrane. And the equipment that you can see here is what's used. This is outside the property, and the funnel allows for the chemical to go in and to be pumped at a regulated periods through and into the walls. Fairly straightforward. It doesn't take very long. The drilling obviously is noisy, but it's fairly straightforward, and you can see the row of holes here that's been made, and as they're filled up with the chemical as well. So damp proof course doesn't necessarily need to happen right throughout the house, but it may be that in certain areas where there has been some compromising of the pointing and so on, that you might need to do some patches of damp proof coursing. The most important element, of course, is to bring the plaster back off the wall to about 1 metre around the edges of all the plaster, the damp on the plaster that you can see, and that allows for it to be replastered again once the membrane's been put into place, and for you to replace the plaster that's been damaged by the dampness in the walls. And once you've got that, you plaster it, you paint it in the same way you would any normal walls, and you can't see the damp. It shouldn't come back, it shouldn't cause a problem, and you've then, your building and your walls will be fine from here on in. So that's really the damp proof course now that's gone into this probate property, that hopefully gives you some information. Some of this information has been taken from the Clean Slate magazine, which is a membership magazine for the Centre of Alternative Technology. So just to give them credit for some of the work and some of the information that I've given you on this information recording. So have a look at the damp proof course. If you haven't seen the probate property, then go and take a look at the other videos in the probate property series, and you'll be able to see the whole project from beginning to end.